Breaking news. America is trembling. This morning, Washington was rocked by an explosive revelation that could shatter the very foundations of the White House. A former bodyguard of President Donald Trump has stepped forward with shocking testimony. According to his words, the sitting president of the United States has, for years, been secretly involved with multiple young women, some barely of legal age. Even more disturbing, the bodyguard claims this dark secret was not only known, but deliberately covered up by Trump's inner circle, including members of his own security team. The witness describes secret arrangements inside luxury hotels in Miami, private rooms set up in Trump's personal estates, and even hidden quarters within the White House itself. He alleges that large sums of money, sometimes millions of dollars, were funneled through offshore accounts and shell companies to silence the young women and to erase any trace of scandal. This is not idle gossip. This is the sworn account of a man who stood just feet away from the president, who guarded his life, who overheard his late-night conversations, and who now risks everything to bring the truth to light. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was the first to receive these sworn statements. Standing in front of the cameras, she did not mince her words. This is not rumor. This is betrayal of the American people, abuse of power at the highest level, and a danger to our democracy itself. The American public deserves to know what is happening behind the closed doors of their president. If his own protectors were ordered to hide such behavior, what else might they be hiding from the people? And here lies the most terrifying detail. The testimony includes names, real names of women involved. And one of those names has already sent shockwaves through Washington. Hook. Who is she? And why does her connection to Donald Trump strike at the very heart of American politics? The answer comes in the next chapter. The shocking testimony from Trump's former bodyguard is not just words whispered in the dark, it is backed by evidence. Documents, receipts, and even photographs have now emerged, each one painting a picture of corruption and betrayal at the very core of the White House. According to leaked files obtained by Jasmine Crockett's team, secret payments were authorized through companies no one had ever heard of before. These shell firms, scattered across the Caribbean and Eastern Europe, funneled cash to cover up nights of pleasure and silence witnesses who could have destroyed the president's image. One invoice revealed a staggering $120,000 wired in a single transaction to a consultant whose only role, investigators believe, was to arrange travel and accommodations for women connected to Trump. Another receipt shows private jet flights booked under false names, leaving Miami at midnight and landing in Washington before dawn. These are not rumors, they are hard numbers, official records, impossible to dismiss. But the most damning piece comes from a phone log. A private line, registered under a security alias, shows dozens of late-night calls, traced back to the Oval Office itself. The calls were short, urgent, and always followed by sudden movements of Secret Service detail. The bodyguard insists these were the signals, the secret codes used to move the women in and out without drawing attention. Jasmine Crockett, holding the evidence in her hands, spoke with fire. This is how dictatorships are born. When truth is buried, when lies are protected, when power is used to satisfy personal desires instead of serving the people. These documents prove not just moral failure, but systemic corruption within this presidency. The public reaction has already begun to boil. Talk radio hosts are calling it worse than Watergate. Retired generals warn of compromised security. Families across America are asking, If the president is capable of this, what else is he capable of hiding? And yet, what has been revealed so far is only the beginning. Because inside the testimony lies one name, one young woman, whose identity could shake not just Trump's career, but the entire American political system. Hook. Her name is about to be revealed. And when it is, Washington will never be the same again. The moment the first evidence hit the airwaves, America exploded. Cable news networks ran wall-to-wall coverage, headlines screamed betrayal, and the internet drowned in fury. Hashtags like the Trump scandal, Bodyguard confession, and White House cover-up climbed to the top of social media overnight. Seniors in retirement communities, veterans halls, and church gatherings were all saying the same thing. We've seen scandals before, but nothing like this. Phone lines to congressional offices jammed as angry citizens demanded investigations. In diners across the Midwest, people whispered that the country was once again reliving the darkest days of Watergate. The scandal was no longer about rumors or accusations. It was about a sitting president whose moral compass had shattered, and a nation wondering whether its leader had betrayed not just his office, but the very trust of the people. Trump himself could not stay silent. Within hours, he stormed into the press room, visibly enraged. His voice thundered as he called the allegations a total witch hunt and slammed Jasmine Crockett as a radical liar trying to destroy America from within. He pounded the podium red-faced, insisting that the so-called evidence was fake, that the bodyguard was a disgraced nobody, and that the entire scandal was manufactured by political enemies. But the anger only fueled the flames. Protesters gathered outside the White House gates, some waving signs reading "Truth for America," others chanting "Resign now." At the same time, Trump supporters clashed with critics in the streets, insisting their president was the victim of yet another conspiracy. The nation grew more divided by the hour, and then came the whisper that turned anger into dread. Sources close to the investigation leaked that one of the women mentioned in the testimony was not just a random young stranger. She had ties to a prominent political family, ties that could unravel a web of influence stretching across Washington's highest circles. Jasmine Crockett, calm but firm, promised the revelation was coming soon. When this name is spoken, the American people will understand why this scandal is not just about personal sin. It's about corruption that reaches into the very soul of our democracy. Hook. Whose daughter is she? The shocking answer threatens to drag an entire dynasty into the fire. The storm around Washington had already reached hurricane force, but stage 4 of this scandal would send the winds tearing through the very heart of America's political establishment. For days, people speculated about the mysterious name in the testimony. Who could it be? Which family would fall? And then, the revelation leaked. The young woman mentioned by Trump's former bodyguard was allegedly tied to one of the most influential dynasties in U.S. politics, a family whose legacy stretches back decades. Reporters scrambled to verify the story, but Jasmine Crockett made it clear. This is not speculation. This is sworn testimony. This is evidence. She refused to release the name prematurely, insisting that it would come in due time, with irrefutable proof. But that didn't stop the whispers. Capitol Hill was on fire with rumors. Some pointed to a senator's daughter, others to the child of a cabinet member. What terrified Washington most was the idea that this was not a scandal in isolation. It was a web, a network of protection, money, and silence. Trump, furious beyond measure, launched personal attacks against Jasmine Crockett like never before. In a late-night rally, his voice cracked with rage as he called her a fraud, a traitor, and even a clown who should be locked up. His supporters roared, chanting his name, but the ferocity of his response only convinced millions more Americans that Jasmine had struck a nerve. Why, commentators asked, would the President of the United States unleash such fury if there was nothing to hide? The division in the country deepened. Talk radio framed it as a battle for the soul of America. Older Americans who had lived through the Nixon era shook their heads in disbelief. Back then, it was tapes, one man told a reporter, but this is flesh and blood. The scandal had grown beyond morality. It was now about national security, corruption, and the collapse of trust in the highest office. And just when the uproar seemed unbearable, Crockett hinted at something even darker. "The cover-up," she said, "is bigger than the crime, and the people who helped hide this will shock every American watching tonight." Hook. Who helped him? The list of enablers is about to surface, and it contains names America never expected. For weeks, whispers had swirled about documents too explosive to see daylight. Tonight, they surfaced. Jasmine Crockett, standing before a sea of flashing cameras, revealed what she called the smoking gun, a document that could bring down a presidency. It was a financial transfer order, stamped and signed, moving $2.3 million from a Trump-linked shell company into an offshore account tied directly to one of the young women at the center of the scandal. The paper trail was clear, undeniable, and devastating. Forensic accountants confirmed the signatures were authentic. The routing numbers traced directly back to entities controlled by Trump's inner circle, and the timing of the payments matched the very nights the Bodyguard described. There was no wiggle room, no plausible deniability. The evidence now stood as a monument of guilt. Reporters gasped as Jasmine held the document high. This is not a rumor. This is not speculation. This is hard proof that the President of the United States used his power, his influence, and his money to silence women and deceive the American people. The fallout was immediate. Calls rang out for impeachment hearings. Former allies of Trump began to distance themselves, issuing vague statements about letting the process play out. Protesters outside the White House screamed louder than ever, demanding accountability. Retired military leaders appeared on television, warning that a president compromised by such scandals could not be trusted to safeguard national security. And yet, Trump's loyalists dug in. At a hastily arranged rally, he shouted into the microphone, "Fake! It's all fake! They're coming after me because they can't control me!" But his words rang hollow against the cold steel of the documents now circulating on every news network in America. The nation stood on the edge of a cliff. The scandal had grown beyond sex, beyond money. It was now about survival of democracy itself. But Jasmine Crockett warned that even this was not the final revelation. "If you think this is the end," she told the cameras, "you are not ready for what comes next, because this cover-up runs deeper than anyone dares to admit." The nation thought it had seen the worst. The secret affairs, the hush money, the offshore accounts, already enough to rattle every American living room. But Jasmine Crockett warned that the cover-up was bigger than the crime. And now the truth burst into the open like a bomb. Her team released a dossier of names, individuals who allegedly worked to hide the president's secret life. The list was jaw-dropping. Senior aides in the West Wing, high-ranking members of the Secret Service, and even 2 sitting senators accused of pressuring investigators to look the other way. Emails leaked from encrypted servers revealed conversations about protecting the boss at all costs and moving the girls quickly before the press catches wind. One shocking thread showed a direct order. Clear the residence tonight. Make sure no staff sees them leave. No cameras. The directive was traced back to a senior White House official, a person Americans trusted to guard national security. Instead, that official was allegedly protecting the president's personal sins. The bodyguard's testimony suddenly looked modest compared to this avalanche. Jasmine Crockett, her voice firm and unshaken, declared, "This is a conspiracy inside the government itself to shield the president from justice. When enablers silence truth, democracy begins to die." The public reaction was immediate chaos. Crowds swelled outside Congress, demanding resignations. Talk shows erupted with fiery debates, some anchors calling it the death of trust in Washington. In small towns across America, seniors who once defended Trump sat stunned in front of their televisions. "If even his protectors lied," one woman said, "what else is he hiding?" Trump lashed out again, calling the names on the dossier heroes and branding Jasmine as a puppet of the radical left. But even among his supporters, cracks appeared. Too many documents, too many voices, too many lies uncovered. And then Jasmine delivered the line that froze the room. "There is one final piece of evidence, and when I reveal it, no one, not even Donald Trump himself, will be able to deny the truth." The cameras flashed. The air was electric. America waited in silence as Jasmine Crockett stepped up to the podium, holding a final folder in her hand. She had promised one last revelation, and the weight of the moment pressed down on every viewer from New York to Los Angeles. Seniors in nursing homes, veterans in community halls, families gathered in living rooms, they all leaned closer to their screens. This was history unfolding in real time. Jasmine's voice was steady, unwavering. "For weeks, we have exposed the lies. We have uncovered the payments, the cover-ups, the network of enablers. But today, I stand before you with the last piece of evidence, a sworn affidavit signed by the very man who once protected the president's life." The affidavit, notarized and authenticated, detailed how the bodyguard was ordered to escort young women into restricted areas of the White House. It described secret rendezvous, direct cash deliveries, and coded instructions. The signature at the bottom was undeniable. The testimony was no longer a whisper in the shadows, it was a legally binding statement, impossible to erase. Gasps filled the press room as Jasmine continued, "This is not gossip. This is not speculation. These are facts. Facts that prove abuse of power at the highest level of government. Facts that prove corruption inside the very walls meant to protect our democracy. And facts that America deserves to hear." Her words cut like steel. The President of the United States betrayed his office. He betrayed the trust of the people. And no amount of shouting or denial can change the truth that now stands before you. The room erupted, reporters shouting questions, networks breaking into special coverage. Outside, chants of "Justice, justice," thundered through the streets. For millions of Americans watching, this was not just about one man, it was about the future of the nation. Jasmine closed with a direct call to the people. "This fight is not about me. It's about every American who still believes in truth, in justice, in democracy. If you care about our country, if you believe no one is above the law, then stand with me. Share this story. Tell your friends. And stay with us, because this is only the beginning."